Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. We are all too familiar with the narrative surrounding wide-scale support for the LGBTQ plus agenda. The normalization of this agenda is now infiltrating our elementary schools and is built on disinformation that boils down to a simple concept that God made a mistake. Gender confusion, same-sex attraction, and the internal battle that rages in the souls of many is a desperate cry for help. But what if there were forces at work to actually criminalize, demonize, and legislate the prohibition of organizations offering help to those struggling with this rapidly growing social and spiritual crisis? Stephen Black has been the executive director of First Stone Ministries since 2000. He's worked in full-time Christian ministry and leadership with First Stone since 1993. He was ordained with the International Ministry Fellowship in October of '94 and is the author of many articles and teaching aids. He appears here on the third Monday of every month, the 11 o'clock hour, as we talk about the issues surrounding this very important matter. You can find more about him at firststone.org. Here to co-host this Freedom Realized Hour is the author of Freedom Realized, Finding Freedom from Homosexuality and Living a Life Free from Labels, is the executive director of First Stone, Stephen Black. Stephen, good to see you, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Always good to be with you, Eric.
It is it's a busy time in this new move from what was once considered to be liberal to now is clearly progressive. And there is no more liberal. There is only conservative and progressive. The whole midline, middle, liberal, right-leaning is gone. The distinction is progressive or conservative, and the chasm between the two has never been wider than it is today, and it seems to be widening on a daily basis.
You know, I think that may help the church and may help some of these young people be able to delineate things that are so outrageously dark, like seeing this little cartoon video of these executioners, slamming a baby down on Cartoon Network. I saw this last week, or, the level of craziness that's going on with abortion and Planned Parenthood. But now their idea of making Planned Parenthood a stepping stone for also the removal of breasts on healthy teenage girls, the idea of giving them hormone blockers. And it's like the very opposite of what they propose that they are, some form of compassionate help to women, and yet they are the complete opposite of that. It really is evil is good and good is evil on this progressive side. So these delineations, I think, are really going to be honestly in our favor of the truth. We certainly have the science on our side. That's what's so interesting about what's happening in our day, is that we have to get back to calling for leadership, like what's happening in the House, in the Senate. And we've got some good news going on here in Oklahoma in regard to being able to clearly and courageously communicate the science on all of this concerning homosexuality, LGBTQ, because heterosexuality is not merely a orientation. Heterosexuality is actually innate. It is immutable. We are XX as females and XY as males. That never changes. It is biology 101, and it's throughout all of our chromosomes. Now, yes, there are abnormalities. People are born with ambiguous genitalia. People have deformities of all sorts, but that doesn't change the fact that we're male and female. And so addressing this American Psychological Association narrative of orientation, which really is trying to legitimize unnatural affections and lusts and desires. So these young people coming up, they're seeing the political conservative, but also Christian conservatism that actually believes that we're made in the image of God, as opposed to more of a progressive, critical race theory, social justice, and gay Christian side over here, along with a very progressive political system that goes as far as, killing of the unborn. These two delineations of truth, I think, is actually going to help bring about what I'm praying for, what I know you've been praying for, a great revival in these last days. So that you're right, Rabbi. I mean, this is happening right before our eyes. There is such a clear delineation of good and evil. And and my wife and I, we were talking about this even with our own kids and the assault on their minds to be somehow compassionate to this progressive movement, even in the church. I think is going to be able to clearly swing people back to, we have to really be compassionately giving bold truth. If we're going to really be compassionate, if we're going to really be merciful to a soul, we have to tell them the house is burning.
It's very interesting that Catholicism represents about 50% of Christianity by large globally. Of the 2.5 billion Christians in the world, 1.25 billion are affiliated with the Catholic Church. And this release came out today that the Vatican, Pope Francis says Catholic Church can't bless same-sex marriages because God can't bless sin. And in this statement that was put out, for the first time I saw wording that I found that I could actually align with, and that was the treatment of people versus the treatment of the sin. Right. So it says that the Catholic Church and its priests cannot bless same-sex union because God cannot bless sin. It says the church and priests can still bless people who are gay, who live in fidelity. Rather, it declares illicit any form of blessing that tends to acknowledge their union. He said what the Vatican position is that homosexual people have the right to be in a family. They are the children of God. They at one point he had said that as long as there's a legal covering, they were okay with it. But now he says that, but he cannot bless sin. He blesses sinful man so that he may recognize he's part of his plan of love and allow himself to be changed by him. The church does not have and cannot have the power to bless unions of persons of the same sex. The church explicitly says gay women, men and women can be blessed, but that the domestic union of a gay couple should not be liturgically blessed, lest people misinterpret this blessing as a form of Catholic marriage. He has repeatedly condemned same-sex marriage, but wants to continue to bless the individual in hopes that their relationship with Messiah will bring about transformation. And you and I have always talked about embracing everyone with love. That is, God is love, our Christian walk is to be love. We are not endorsing because we love the person and we administer love to the person does not mean we are endorsing the behavior. What we're doing is we're opening up a pathway to relationship with the God of love, who once they acknowledge that he's the creator and they are the creation, then they must align with his creation design, which is men are men and women are women. And so that can't be done confrontationally. You found this out, you learned this yourself in your own life, that confrontational Christianity is a stumbling block. It's a stumbling block to the Jew. It's a stumbling block to the Muslim. It's a stumbling block to those engaged in any form of sin in confrontational Christianity as opposed to loving as Messiah loved the sinner.
Yeah, confrontational Christianity if we're speaking of like the offerings that have been coarse and cruel and mean, that's not helpful. But confrontational Christianity, when there is the bold truth that is loving, that is filled with tears or heartfelt desire, that boldly proclaims um, salvation and deliverance through no other name but the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, the Holy Anointed One, that there is no other salvation except through Him, then that is going to cause, even with, like Saul, with people like myself, that was outside of a gay bar one night, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. There was this young, probably in his 20s, 30s, pastor out there with a college and career group, and they were singing outside of a gay bar. And they had called out to me and said, "Young man, you don't have to go in there. You don't have to go in there. Jesus loves you." And I looked at these people, and they were all really attractive people, and they had seemed like they had a glow about them. They were physically attractive, but it was a different otherworld attractiveness. And so I went into the gay bar, and I remember dancing on that floor, and I could not stop thinking about their bold offering of truth, that what I was doing was sinful. And I had just enough truth inside of me, being raised in the parochial school and Catholicism, that my conscience was still somewhat alive to that truth. And of course, I knew I was dishonoring my parents. My parents hated me being homosexual, but that bold truth today, or somebody doing something like that, would be considered what is hate speech. And that is the day that we're living. And, if we're going to really be truly a loving people and propose the idea that you're walking in love, then to the gay Christian or to the homosexual, then what about the fruit of love that is self-control? The fruit of the love that is long-suffering and dying to self. Those things have to be integrated into our Christian paradigm, that Jesus has called us to pick up our cross and follow Him. And that is a very loving thing to tell somebody, and certainly a confronting Christianity, right? And no doubt, in this day that we're living, like with the Canadian pastor and the pastors in Europe that are being jailed by simply just preaching, Romans 1. And so we're living in a very interesting day, and we have to have an eternal mindset. We have to have an eternal internal, is what I call it. If we live in coram deo with an eternal internal, and we're living for the next life, then we don't have to be afraid of going to jail or being persecuted. It can be part of the joyful journey. Like, it's hard to imagine that Jesus actually had joy, but He had the big picture, right? It said in Hebrews that the joy set before Him, that He endured the cross. Now, we know in our physical bodies and in our physical way of living a Christian life, no suffering is pleasant. But if you get the big picture, and you're living with that eternal internal, so that you're living to live for the next life, it can make everything joyful in this journey, as we are really called to trust God. And that's what we need to be calling leadership to, especially a lot of these, like our Senator Langford. He was a Baptist minister and a preacher, and ran a Baptist city, which is called Falls Creek in Oklahoma. It's this gigantic summer camp that over 20,000 people can go to. And the idea of being bold and loving and courageous is a call that we need these leaders to stand up on these issues. Otherwise, these progressives are going to want to run right over the top of us. And don't kid yourself, this Equality Act is meant to change banking and insurance And, of course, all the education systems, of course, they want to manipulate all the Fortune 500 businesses and, legislate in many ways as they want. But when they start controlling your finances and they start controlling your insurance, and they're already trying to control all social media and the airwaves, we're in trouble. And so we have to realize that in God, his voice, his word, his ways never return void. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Father comes into the midst of all this chaos and even persecution and makes a way for his truth, because he always does. He always moves in with his truth and his love, his ways. Eventually, when you're in the middle of the Holocaust, you wouldn't have thought. It's like, the 10 boons, right? They're like going, where are you, God? Where are you? And in the pain and the suffering, and many others that there's stories through that suffering. But we saw what happened, and we've seen even on this side, God did move in. And look how Germany is like completely recovered. It's amazing what God can do in a short time. But that's where we need big picture. That's where we really must have this eternal internal, not be afraid, be courageous, and to make a really salty and very peaceful, but yet very bold, kind proclamation of truth to all of these leaders, that enough is enough, and we need to start getting back to real science and truth on all this LGBTQ chaos. Otherwise, we're sacrificing children, Pastor. I mean, we really are sacrificing our children to Baal and Ashtoreth. And now they're even promoting the idea of adoption and putting these kids into the hands of sexual predators. This is unbelievable what's going on when you really read through and watch what's happening. That plus sign on that LGBTQ, that plus sign is normalization of pedophilia. It is the normalization. Even the APA says minor attracted person. They're actually trying to dumb down the idea and normalize pedophilia. Now, 20 years ago, if I would have said what I said, I'd be thrown out. And, you are a hate monger. Anita Bryant was considered ridiculous in the 70s, but she was right. And her whole ministry was called Save the Children. And why? Because you can prophetically see that this is a progression. Sin never stays in a box. When you let sin out and let it run rampant, sin brings destruction. It is corrosive. And that's what's happening in our culture with all of this craziness that's going on. That's why Freedom Realized, that's why your program, that's why speaking the truth about these things, we need to give people hope for change, hope for freedom. So I'm sorry, I got a little preachy there, but Eric, I'm very passionate about this.
Well, it's exactly what we need. And I want to rephrase that confrontational Christianity is what we need. Condemnational Christianity is not what we need.
Amen. Amen.
That's really the distinction, is that yes, we should be bold in our witness, but without the condemnation. And I think that that's where that's come into play, is condemnation. But you talk about adoption. This report came out last week that Bethany Christian Services, which is a large conservative Christian adoption and refugee resettlement agency, has moved to grant LGBTQ plus people the same access to adoption and foster care that afford straight couples in all its branches in the United States. And this is going to set a trend that's going to legitimize that all of the Christian-based operations for foster care and adoption are going to be, it just takes one at the top to build this domino effect that says that this doesn't come cascading down. This is a significant change, and one that is causing a lot of division. As you know, denominations are splitting over this issue. It is not just a social issue, it's a biblical mandate, and there are those who are choosing to look at the scriptures, and God says, woe to those that call evil good and good evil. And so this concept of the gay Christian is in such it's such a it's an impossibility.
It's an erosion. It's a distortion.
It really is. And then there are now new fabrications of Jesus being a racist and having made an apology for him being a racist. And, we get these narratives thrown in, and because they get out there, people start buying into a whole new narrative. And because those who are so committed to their sin that anything which is in opposition, anything which is in conflict, or anything outside their field of vision, if it supports their case, they'll pull it into the vortex. But if it doesn't support their case, they will violently condemn it and expand their tent pegs, because what they do is they apply so much financial pressure that they wind up absorbing it, because in order for some of these organizations to survive financially, to take their good work that they do, which comprises 80-90% of the work they do, they're having to compromise the 10%, because the 10% have sway over the funding that's coming out of the 90%. And so we're looking at this compromise that's taking place, and it is heretical. There's no question that it is heresy. However, as we look at what Paul writes in Timothy and what Jesus told us that these days would be like, these are all the days of Noah, the days of Lot. These are exactly as God said they would be. But that does not excuse anyone from today. As this unfolds, it is more a clarion call for the believer to up their game and to get to the lost while the lost can still be found. There's a day that's going to come when there's going to be a line that once you're identified as a believer, you will be cut off from the world of commerce. Whether you believe you're going to be taken out, whether or not you believe you're going to be here for part of it, some of it, none of it. All I can tell you is everyone will find out at the same time. And nobody knows when it's going to happen. We'll just all find out once it happens, then we'll know it happened. So until that day comes, this is where we need to amp up, ramp up, and up our game to be salt and light in a world which is slowly, but rather fast, rather quickly, slipping into this precipice. This story about the three, and the troubling part about these three fathers, the first family in California in the state to list three dads and a birth certificate, is the backstory is there was these two gay men married who met a psychiatrist while they were completing their medical residencies in Boston, and he joined together with them as a part of this polyamorous group, and the three of them have adopted a child. And here is a psychiatrist, medically trained professional, that is living this lifestyle and endorsing this behavior, going against every bit of, all of them are doctors, all know what the science says, but are hiding behind it.
And in that story, we have a psychiatrist which has received some training and even understanding mentally, psychologically, how to manipulate people. And, you can have good psychologists and psychiatrists that really care about the souls of people. And then you can have some really smart, even mastermind narcissists that manipulate people. And I think that's what we have here. We have a situation where you have, and we've seen this before, the abuse of power, the abuse of doctors and lawyers and even pastors that abuse people, manipulate them, and even call it love. And so there is, without getting too graphic, there is a world of sexual pleasure and sexual debauchery that can also be very addictive in these what they call thruples. And now the very disturbing thing is they're going to bring a little boy into this. And don't kid yourself, that little boy is going to learn what those three men participate in sexual activity. Now, at what stage? No one knows. But we have seen this in the news before, although buried most of the time, where you have these sexually addicted people who actually do propagate and sexually abuse children. And it's this erosion of sin. When sin, especially sexual sin, enters into the heart of man, it does not stay in the box. It doesn't stay like fire. When it's a raging fire in a forest, it's not going to stay contained. It's going to keep burning and burning and burning until it brings utter destruction. And that's what we're looking at with some of this chaotic, boundaryless sexuality that has entered into our culture. And again, who is suffering the most? It's the innocent, right? And this, if you look at this from a very, very just pretty much Bible 101 spirituality, from the very beginning, there is a dark enemy. It is Satan and his hordes of hell who hate humanity. Their desire is to pervert the very image of God. They want to bring destruction to it. It's a mockery in the spirit realm as they laugh and mock and to even destroy human souls. And that's the saddest thing. If we could pull back the curtain on what's going on in the spirit realm and show people how destructive and how dark, and even these people that labor under this inordinate desire, lust, that they try to normalize, calling it same-sex attraction as some kind of a segue into their humanity that honestly is now even in the church at the highest levels. They call it sexual minorities in the Gospel Coalition. And it's tragic because it's leaving people in bondage. But if we could pull back the curtains on even those people who are laboring under it and teach them spiritual warfare when it talks about taking every thought captive to the obedience of Jesus, there is liberty and freedom. And and I know, I mean, that's what we're all about, is we want people to have lasting hope and freedom. This is the most compassionate thing we can do, is to continue to tell people there really is freedom. That's why I write about this and talk about this and preach on this and do these interviews, and so grateful to be a co-host with you to talk about these things, because freedom really is available to the person who really wants it. And that is so important in this day of chaos that we're in, when you've got three men wanting to father a boy, when he desperately also needs a mother, when he desperately needs that one man, one woman home image of man and woman to bring about a healthy identity development in that child, in that little boy.
Amen.
And he's being robbed. And
Amen.
so these adoption agencies, these Christian adoption agencies, they're going to find that if I was in the market for trying to find an adoption agency, that would be the last one I would want to go to now. So you're going to have really good, godly Christian people that are going to go, that doesn't look like a very good adoption agency anymore. we're going to circumvent them. So whoever's in charge over there, thinking that they're making some kind of a, broader pathway to help and be a blessing to everyone, they are sadly mistaken. Because the good people are going to go and find people that will tell the truth and stay the line, uncompromised holiness. That's where the righteous will go. And those are the good parents. Those are the people that we should be putting children in their homes. So this is very sad, this news piece. It's heartbreaking, honestly.
I agree. As an adoptive father, I can tell you that the agency that we went through were in California. This is 31 years ago, but were very God-centric and very selective in their process. We're talking with Stephen Black, author of Freedom Realized, Finding Freedom from Homosexuality, Living a Life Free from Labels. He is the executive director of First Stone Ministries, who's dedicated to bringing the truth of freedom realized and offering help and support for those who are asking for help in their struggle with same-sex attraction and homosexuality. Find more about him and the ministry at firststone.org. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to have a little discussion about this conversation, this move by Amazon to remove books deeming anything as hate speech, which labels LGBTQ plus identity as mental illness. And that is their selection criteria for censorship, that anything that portrays LGBTQ plus as negative or something that is not normative, that they are removing it and censoring it from their bookstore. This gives us concern as we look at what happened in 1939 with Nazi Germany and how children were impacted by the Hitler Youth and the uniform message that was taught in the school system and what is now becoming part of the agenda, all the way down to kindergarten and preschool. Your kids are being introduced to concepts that you and I know to be unbiblical. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, host of Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Revealing Prophecy, seen every week on the Igniting Nation Broadcasting Network. Our daily on-demand programming is available on our Apple and Android apps and on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Android TV. We broadcast live Monday through Friday through our apps, on our website, ignitingnation.com, and on Facebook Live. You can listen daily on our audio platforms on Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, and iHeart. Our lineup of best-selling authors bring you the most in-depth biblical insights into the most pressing issues of our time, including prophecy, Israel, spiritual warfare, and a wide variety of contemporary Christian issues impacting the body of Messiah around the globe. If you missed the live show, you can always catch up on the Igniting Nation YouTube channel. Follow us on social media and join us as we endeavor to heal the nations with the Word of God.
With today's smartphone technology, news, information, sports, and entertainment is widely available and almost unbounded. But what about the information that believers in Yeshua are looking for? Well, now there's an app for that. Igniting a Nation now has apps available for Android and iPhone. With our app, you'll gain access to everything you would in our website, from our featured guests to our live streaming shows. Visit Google Play or the Apple Store and download Igniting a Nation's new app today.
Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to study right by my side through the Biblical Truth Library. Imagine having access to over 1,000 hours of audio and video teachings available to you through our website on a subscription basis or via our Apple and Android apps on an a la carte basis. Whichever method you choose, we promise to deliver new insights into the living Word of God as seen through the eyes of a Jewish believer. If you hunger and thirst like millions around the world for a deeper walk with God and the revelation of new understanding of the Scriptures, visit ignitingnation.com and click on the Biblical Truth Library or on any device with our free app. Don't let another day go by without receiving your heart's desire for a new depth of understanding into all of God's Word. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and my special featured guests twice per month with Rabbi Zeb Parat and Carl Gallups, and monthly with Dr. Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Timothy Jennings, Dr. Mark Baker, Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Drs. Michelle and Mark Sherwood, Dr. Kim Moss, Derek Gilbert, Peter Rosenberger, Brandon Gallups, Steve Fair, Stephen Black for in-depth insights into Israel, prophecy, the unseen realm, the brain, spiritual warfare, overcoming shame, mysteries of the Bible, prophetic insights, the sensational and the supernatural, caregiving, addiction recovery, understanding the divided heart, same-sex attraction, and much more. We're proud to feature some of the greatest biblical minds from both Israel and around the United States. Check out our featured guest lineup and 24/7 feed on ignitingnation.com or watch by topic on any device with our free apps. If you can't find what you need, you're just not looking in the right place. Follow us on social media and download our free apps today. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and Israel's #1 rated guide, Edo Canaan, for our annual Israel trip. Our 2022 trip is now open for registration for our 18th trip to Israel. Our trip will take us from Tel Aviv to the Galilee, down to the Dead Sea, and 4 nights in Jerusalem. You will walk where Yeshua walked and watch the Bible turn from black and white to living color. Visit ignitingnation.com/events and download the registration form today. No, it's not too early to take advantage of our payment plan designed to fit any budget. All of our trips sell out, and we want you to experience this life-changing journey. Registration is now open for April 2nd to 13th, 2022, and we promise you, you will never read your Bible the same way again. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and as we do on this third Monday of every month at the 11 o'clock hour, we meet with our good friend Stephen Black, Executive Director of First Stone Ministries and author of Freedom Realized, Finding Freedom from Homosexuality and Living a Life Free from Labels. Stephen, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Good to always be here.
Late last month, Senators Josh Hawley, Marco Rubio, Mike Lee, and Mike Braun wrote a letter to Amazon's leaders demanding an explanation for their decision to pull Ryan Anderson's book, When Harry Became Sally, without warning. The same week, Target silently banned Abigail Schreier's Irreversible Damage from its stores for a second time, in which the senators characterized as a signal to conservative Americans that their views are not welcome on its platforms. Responding just weeks after reporters uncovered Amazon's new policy to ban books it deems hate speech, the world's most powerful bookseller declared it has chosen not to sell books that frame the LGBTQ+ identity as mental illness.
So there we go again. We have the brainwashing of people believing in this orientation narrative that somehow there is an immutability in behavior rather than immutability in what is God's design of heterosexuality. And so no matter how hard a transgendered person who is trying to, erase the fact that they were born either male or female and transition, that transition is nothing but a surgical procedure. It is not actually making a male into a female or a female into a male. And that is what Ryan Anderson did with his book, is to clearly show that they are really revealing to the world, if you pay attention, they actually hate the truth. They hate the science because they love their religion of secular humanism. They are secular humanists, and LGBTQ is faith-based. They are putting faith in their lust and desires of their own self. So they've made themselves, just like the scriptures teaches us in Romans 1, they are now making themselves in the image of God and their behaviors. And this is what people need to understand. So then you have a political power that is in place, and people that are in the head of Amazon know that they will, right now at this juncture, that they have full liberty to do whatever they kind of, feel, whatever they, please. They get to do right now. And, our senators and representatives, as well-meaning, and thank God they are calling attention to it. We should never be quiet, even if we are the minority. We have to be a voice of reason. And because I think this will, and I pray so, will swing back and reveal how unscientific that this quote unquote psychology is of this, orientation narrative that's propagating now even to the darkest debasement of pedophilia. And people, they don't like me saying this, but this is also going on is zoophilians, which is a kind of their nice way of legitimizing the orientation of bestiality. And this stuff is going on, and so they want to scrub away anybody, because they'll put, like these nice little Hollywood sitcoms, the gay couple over here, the gay man with the female over here. They'll put these programs on, and they try to sanitize and make homosexuality normalized. And that's even what they want to teach to our children now, right? They want, Heather to have two mommies, and they want Johnny to have two daddies. And they're normalizing this even at the elementary level. And they think they're winning a battle here. And so they feel like that they can go in and censor all kinds of books because, we've got this presidential proclamation that came out on his inaugural day on January 20th, where he signed already pretty much the Equality Act by an executive order. It's not called the Equality Act. It's called an anti-discrimination bill. The idea is that LGBTQ, and this is what the listeners need to understand, they're actually making a behavior, an inordinate, unnatural behavior, normal and legitimized as race and gender that is absolutely immutable. These behaviors are not. Sexuality, even the lesbian PhD Lisa Diamond proved it is fluid. People can change. People change their affections, their lusts, their desires, and the direction of their lives all the time. But Rabbi Eric, you cannot ever change the fact that you were born biological male, that you are XY, and that will be the way you are until the day you die. And this is where we've got to get brave people in leadership in Congress. Thank God we have a few that are saying, you know what, enough is enough with this censoring. Amazon, you need to answer to this, because this is a freedom of speech, a freedom of press, a freedom of religion, and this is about civil liberties. And they're trying to corrode civil liberties by, posturing a certain group of people above everybody else. This is secular humanism. So now we have a government-run religion that's going to tell everybody else that they have to bow down to it. And people, until they actually start hearing this over and over, are they going to understand that that is exactly what is taking place.
When they announced last week that the federal government was issuing a new ID, and in that new ID was no longer a checkbox for male or female, but there was now going to be a third category, added to your federal ID as what your identification is. And the First Amendment, and I want to make sure that I represent it as exactly as it was written so that I have it in the Constitution of the United States, as I keep a copy right next to me.
Beautiful.
And I want to read from it.
I need to get one of those, actually. I think everybody should have one of those right beside them.
They should.
The land.
You know, I mean, it's a buck online, and the availability of this to every American. I mean, this little pocket size fits right in your pocket. But
well, I like the first phrase, and that is there cannot be an establishment of religion.
It says,
and that's what it is.
Here's Brett. Here's what it says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, then, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, and then the freedom of speech, then the freedom of press, then the right of assembly, and access to government for grievances. The very first protection we have under the Constitution is Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Now, I would maintain that what is going on in Washington is unconstitutional and needs to be a lawsuit filed against the federal government for the establishment of secular humanism as the religion of the United States by virtue of the legislation being passed and the censorship and the punishment consequences all the way down to the state level, that every state constitution that mirrors the federal national constitution, United States Constitution, right, that says that the state cannot engage in the formation of religion, that when you implement arrests for people who are preaching sin, and that LGBTQ plus is a sin, and that is considered to be hate speech, is forcing a religious test onto a citizen of the United States who is constitutionally protected by that. And it is now to the level where the federal government is now legislating through the Office of Personnel that you have the ability to add another gender. This is now to the point where it is federally mandated and introducing into the federal narrative something that's expressly forbidden, but they don't call it religion. Therefore, you know, it's like saying that Islam is protected under freedom of religion. Right. Islam is an ideology. It has a civil law component to it. Okay? There's no other religion that has a civil law component to it. Christianity has no civil law. If you don't believe in Christ, I can't kill you. I can't punish you. I can't beat you. I can't subject your wife to, husbands can't subject their wives to physical assault. But within Islam you can. And there is Sharia law. And therefore it is not a religion, it's ideology. And their commitment to the Quran above the Constitution puts them in conflict with First Amendment rights. That's going to ultimately get tested one day in the Supreme Court. But what's
I hope we have some clear thinking justices that are not bent on hellish ideology, but that they are really originalists of the intent, because our founding forefathers, when they even used the word religion, they were talking about different types of denomination of Christianity. and because of what was going on. And this has already been historically proven by the so many thousands of documents, and even in our monuments across Washington, D.C., that their intent was no other establishment of a denominational type religion as a state religion, like was what was going on historically in England. And this secular humanism, I mean, I laughed a minute ago, and I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. I'm laughing because of the level of having male, female, and a check mark box for other. And what that says is now we are absolutely embracing ideology and not scientific fact. We are embracing a faith-based belief system of secular humanism that says you can be LGBTQ as an identity other than male and female. And this is so ambiguous. There is no concrete scientific evidence of this. The largest study on genetics was done a couple of years ago. Well, not even 2 years ago, it was a year and a half ago. The genome-wide associative study that had over 450,000 people that proved conclusively that there is no DNA genetic disposition to homosexuality. It is not immutable. And so to say male, female, and then another check box right there reveals that we have sunk into a place of secular humanism and a belief system that is corrupt. We're not even science-based anymore. And that's tragic.
Right. During the Trump administration, it was officially recognized that Jews were a race of people, that we had DNA markers that could be identified as a race of people. Yet there is not a single application that I have filled out, whether or not it has to do with Social Security, whether or not it has to do with voting, where the race listed is Jewish. So I check other, because I am other. I am of Jewish lineage, both sides of my family, and it's been recognized now as we are a people. Yet there's not a single document which has added that. But you can put under male, female, and other, but you can't do something recognized as a people, as a nation that should have protection under law, but we're specifically excluded from that, which kind of tells you where this country is leading in a very diabolically influenced path. We've been talking with Stephen Black, who co-hosts this Freedom Realized Hour every month on the third Monday of the month at 11 o'clock a.m. You can find his book, Freedom Realized, Finding Freedom from Homosexuality, Living a Life Free from Labels, and also outstanding news to share that the movie In His Image is now free online on YouTube, and you can watch that now without having to worry about a theater or getting the DVD. You can go right to YouTube and watch In His Image. It is one of the most compelling documentaries you're going to find anywhere. Your small groups, your churches should be watching this and learning what it is that God designed man for. Stephen Black, we always run out of time. Always a blessing to be with you, my brother. And I thank you for what you do and the bold voice, and we will, for as long as we can, for as long as they will allow us, regardless of how many times they put us in jail, we will stand with you and bring this message every month to our audience worldwide. This is not something that can be ignored. It is something that is sweeping the world, and we must stand up for biblical truth.
Well, that's what I love about you, Rabbi Eric Walker. You're a lover of the truth, and you're compassionate, and you're willing to courageously talk about this, and I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. God bless you, my friend. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring in the next edition of Revealing the Truth.